This is the lesser known contender for the best elite controller for the PlayStation 5, and what I have here is the Victrix Pro BFG controller, which rivals the newly launched PS5 Dualsense Edge controller. And what makes this equally, if not more special, are all the wild features like swappable thumbsticks, D-pads, and its modular ability to rotate stick orientations or even swap in a fight pad. From first-person shooters to racing to fighting games, this will easily give a competitive edge on PlayStation 5, PS4, and even PC. With esports and competitive gaming in mind, it looks like it really is a pro controller, so is it better than the Dualsense Edge? Today I'll review this controller, and I'll follow up with my Dualsense Edge review, which should be out just after this one. And if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. On this channel I cover gaming, tech, and a few things in between, so if you enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like or subscribe. And if you don't, you're gonna feel like you need to sneeze but can't. Okay, so coming in at $180 US, what do you get? Well, right out of the box, you have this hard shell fabric case, which off the bat feels really good quality. Unzipping the case, you have the Victrix Pro BFG right on top and all of the accessories. On the top end of the case, you have a netted pouch with a super long Type A to C cable, which is braided in the same purple accent color. It's actually surprisingly thick, so this is definitely made to last. You have the Pro BFG itself, which actually feels really good to hold, and I'm not sure if this is heavier or lighter than the Dualsense off the bat. For accessories, you have the included fight pad, which you can swap out at any time, as well as 2 joystick gates. You also have the 2.4 GHz dongle for latency-free gameplay. This top bunch of accessories is definitely a key selling feature for the Pro BFG, especially for competitive fighting game players. Underneath that though, we do have all the additional joysticks, D-pads, and the Allen key to swap out the modular pieces on the controller itself. And wow, getting this thing in hand is actually really nice. Like I mentioned, the weight is very similar, although it feels somewhat lighter than the Dualsense controller, likely since it actually doesn't have any rumble packs that you'd have on the Dualsense. That I'll touch on in a bit. It's shaped more like an Xbox controller, which might be better depending on what you prefer, and it feels really solid in hand. The whole controller is cladded with a grippy texture, and it's almost a super hard rubber with the finest bit of give. This is actually pretty badass when it comes to gripping the controller, especially with my sweaty ass palms. The aesthetic is a matte black body with purple accents throughout, even down to the LEDs. On the controller itself, you do have offset joysticks by default, again similar to the Xbox controllers. You have the classic X, square, triangle, and circle, as well as a PlayStation Start and Share button. There is an additional button which is unique to this controller, which is actually a tournament lock button, which disables the system buttons like the PlayStation Start or menu buttons. In a tournament, an accidental press of one of these would likely get you disqualified. This really goes to show that this is really considered a pro controller. You also have the right and left bumpers and triggers, of course, and on the back end you will find non-removable paddles that are easily reprogrammable to anything you like. You have a profile switching button, as well as 2 switches to control the trigger depth. Lastly, you'll see the screws on the front end, which go in hand with the modularity of this controller, which I'll get into. Oh, and a Type-C port for charging, connection, and updating the controller itself. But starting with the triggers, let me make this absolutely clear, I was not expecting them to be so good. Hopping into Call of Duty first, these triggers can be set to super shallow for the quickest reaction times, not to mention this whole thing is connected over the 2.4 GHz dongle. I mean, I'm pretty trash at Call of Duty, and whether it's placebo or not, I felt like I popped off more than usual on these 12-year-olds. Going into Overwatch, which is another shooter I love, I was able to set one trigger to be insta-click and the other to full motion. In a game where all heroes are dynamic like this, it's great to have the ability to switch each trigger depending on what you're playing. And this I absolutely love. The triggers themselves do have micro grippiness on them as well, and they don't really feel that slippery to use. While they're not mouse click shallow, it's incredibly shallow enough for near instant button clicks. I'll still need to get used to this a little bit more, but there are 5 trigger stops to suit just about any playstyle as well, and it's easy to reset too if you want to hop into another game like Forza or Grand Theft Auto. In terms of the rear paddles, they're super clicky as well and can be remapped super easily by holding the profile button, the trigger you want to use, and then the button of your choice. For me, again hopping into Overwatch, I love this for being able to do objective pings as well as mapping crouch to one of the paddles so I don't have to take my thumb off my aim stick. The paddles themselves are actually pretty small and uninvasive, but with any pro controller you just gotta get used to not clicking them by accident. I also have to mention this was great for accessibility, especially if anyone's missing an index or middle finger. The paddles can be remapped super easily for a better gaming experience. And coming down to the thumbsticks, even the default ones are super comfortable, and there are other ones included. There's a short domed one that I personally don't think I'll use. I've never been a fan of domed sticks. I'm actually asking you guys, is there a better use case for the domed sticks? Let me know down below in the comments. The other included stick is a long stick, which I find super badass for shooters, particularly sniping and aiming down sights, or if you're using this in a fight pad setup. And overall, they're super easy to swap out as well. All you gotta do is pull up and away on your stick and you're swapped out. And and all you gotta do is click in the new one. And for my fighting game pros, there's actually joystick gates here if you do need it for better accuracy on movement. Before getting this controller, this wasn't even a consideration for me. I've never even heard of this, but having the octagon stick gates does help you get a better understanding of movement instead of the regular rounded stick gate. Again, it's another feature I'm sure super competitive players would really enjoy. In terms of the overall modularity, this controller is absolutely top notch in being able to swap out the joysticks, D-pads, but what I love most is being able to swap the orientation of the left joystick. You get the best of both worlds for Xbox joystick orientation or the closer PlayStation style. This is badass and I absolutely love it. Again, more features for the fighting game players. You can swap out the right module to a fight pad. With a little Allen key, again, you can swap this out in just about a minute and get a super clicky fight pad. These buttons are super shallow, kind of like low profile mechanical switches, and honestly, this will be a big deal for some players. These are practically mouse clicks. Likewise, if any buttons or sticks wear out, you could always replace them too, which is incredible. The thing is too, you can always swap game profiles on the back depending on what you're playing. You can swap between 3 profiles. For myself, I have this set up for shooters, driving games, and then I actually unbound everything on my 3rd profile for games like God of War Ragnarok. In terms of battery, it's been fine really. I don't think I'm the demographic that would really burn through the battery anyways. As a tired ass dad, I've got like 2 hours tops to game at the end of the day, and I haven't had any battery issues at all. I have forgotten to charge it though, but luckily the cable is super long and it makes it easy to charge while playing even from my TV to the couch. Of course, with the cable is one of 2 ways to connect, the other being the 2.4 GHz dongle like I mentioned. In terms of what you can connect to, this does have a switch on the top end to swap between PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, as well as PC. I'm still enjoying Red Dead Redemption 2 on this LG ultra-wide OLED, and I still prefer playing games like this on a controller. For other features, the controller does have a 3.5mm headphone jack, which actually still sounds amazing since it does support Sony's 3D audio on the PlayStation 5. There's also the Victrix control hub you can have on PC to update the controller since it won't update through your PlayStation 5 like a Dualsense would. Okay, so there's a whole lot this controller does do, but what's missing? Well, just comparing it to the regular Dualsense, for one, it doesn't have a microphone, so if you used the built-in mic previously on the Dualsense, it's just something to keep in mind. As well, there's no tiny speaker, and lastly, there's no rumble or haptics whatsoever. It seems the controller was primarily built around performance only, without the added experience-based features. For anyone really being competitive though, you're likely plugging in a good headset anyways, which covers you for both sound and microphone. Overall, there's a whole lot going on with this controller, and honestly, it might just be the controller to beat the Dualsense Edge. While they're both pretty expensive, this one does come in 20 bucks less than the Dualsense Edge. Whether or not that's a big difference, it's up to you. But if this controller is this feature packed with an incredible build quality, I'm absolutely pumped to try the Dualsense Edge, which I'm excited to open since it just arrived at the end of making this video. But what do you think? Is this going to be better than the Dualsense Edge? Let me know down below in the comments. I'll have this linked below as well as everything else in my setup, and thanks again for watching. Till next time.